this regard, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Amparo González Ferrer. She's a research scientist at the Demography Institute from the Spanish National Research Council, an expert in demography and immigration with an important professional career in the field of research and in the public sector. Thank you so much, Amparo, and it is a pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. To press this now? Thank you very much. So, good morning to everybody. It is a pleasure to accept this invitation and to have the opportunity to talk with all of you about irregular migration in Spain. The presentation will be in Spanish. My talk would be in English, unless I don't find the word. That can happen. And I hope that in this way everybody can follow properly. We are going to focus in the talk today. True, I forgot that I could look at that screen. Today we are going to focus on, in my talk I'm going to focus on the Spanish case, not because it is the most important, of course, but because we also during the 2 days, during the day we have experts from both shores of the Mediterranean that can definitely illustrate the experience in each of them much better than me. But on the other hand, also because I think, and I'll try to also explain why during the talk, that the Spanish case is quite particular in many dimensions in relation to irregular migration. And one of the ones that I think I would like to highlight is the richness and the availability of statistical information on the phenomenon of irregular migration in many senses that I think is quite unique, not only in the European Union, but also in the rest of the world for different reasons that I'll explain, and that allows us to discuss with a firm basis. This is an area, as you all know, that is very prone to fake news, to misinterpretation of numbers with different goals. And I think that the transparency and the systematic production of statistical information that can be followed over time allows, in the Spanish case, to also have a better public debate on the reasons of the change in the tendencies and trends that we can identify in the phenomenon of irregular migration to our country during the last decades. So I will move with the presentation. And es que lo he puesto al revés. Okay, so I have to be more. So basically we have two main concepts to distinguish when we talk about irregular migration. One thing is irregular entry or irregular arrival, and a different thing that can be connected or not to entry is irregular stay. And this is the first and very important distinction that we need to take into account in order to have an ordered and logical debate about this topic. Basically, in Spain, we have a very good and periodical and official information that is publicly available for everybody in different websites about irregular entries. In the case of Spain, most of the irregular migration traditionally has been irregular entry, has been by coast arrival. However, we have many more irregular stays that don't come from an irregular entry. So many of our migrants came with a tourist visa, and they overstayed the visa and enter in irregular stay that even if they were never counted as an irregular entry. And this distinction is crucial in order to correct and to have a proper image of who is an irregular migrant, when and how and why, and for how long. And this is very different because many of them enter regularly through our airports, and after a while, they, especially in the past, they became irregular stayers, while those who arrive irregularly by coast, and the more and more recently, are not irregular stayers because they are asylum applicants. So the moment you enter, you can have a legal status that right after arriving may change into regular, and the other way around. And this is important in order to distinguish the two phenomena and the two moments of irregularity, and also to adjust the profile and the image that we have of irregular migrant in our minds, and especially in the news. So basically, we have published by the Ministry of Interior every 2 weeks, every 15 days, in their website, specific numbers on irregular entries by boat, and we also have irregular entries by land in the cities of Ceuta and Melilla, and we have very few information about entries by plane. We have the total of them, but we don't have official statistics on the number of people that were detected at airports as having false documents or lacking the proper documentation in order to have or to enter legally the country. So the third point is the one that we have less information about. Still, we have very good information on the other two. With regard to irregular stays, we basically have different procedures to estimate how the number of foreigners that reside in Spain without the proper documentation changed over time. These estimations obviously have some margin of error, but thanks to the fact that we have had good information over many years, regardless of the specific exact number in every particular moment, we have very good information to identify changing in the trends in the size and the proportion that irregular migrants represent over the total number of foreign residents in the country. I will show just a bit for you, if I can here. Oh, sorry. I don't know why it's a bit difficult to find it. So maybe some of you already know, but this is one of the reports that the Ministry of Interior published. This is the latest one, if I'm not wrong, so up to the 15th of September, quite updated, and everybody can go to the Ministry of Interior website and see every 15 days and the cumulative year numbers for irregular migration by boat or by land in the places where I mentioned. This is quite unique in the European context. Secondly, well, I will go to that later. Basically, what I wanted to mention additionally on irregular stays is that we have also not only an estimation of the total foreign population that in a particular moment resides in Spain irregularly without the proper documentation to prove their legal residence in the country, but also we have certain statistics on particular groups of people that were in an irregular situation previously and applied and obtained documentation through a permanent regularization mechanism that is included in our immigration legislation since already 15 years, which is called the arraigo procedure, for those people that prove that they not only have been living de facto in the country for a particular number of years, but also meet some other requirements that the state considers relevant and valuable in order to grant them a residence and work permit, either because they have a job offer or because they have family links in the country or because they have denounced irregular hiring of foreign workers by employers and so on and so forth. So it's not a like in the past, it's not a massive regularization program. It's a permanent mechanism that is evaluated on an individual basis and according to the particular circumstances, and that the individual proof the person is granted or not a residence permit after a period of irregular residence. So I will show some numbers about that later. So basically, I'm going to be very brief in this because I think it is important for you to understand the origin of the estimation. So basically how we do it in Spain in order to estimate the size of the irregular foreign population in the country. Basically we have periodical statistics coming from the municipal census, which is quite unique, and this is the unique characteristic that I was mentioning at the beginning in the introduction. In Spain is not only possible, but almost compulsory for foreigners to register in the municipal census regardless of their legal status. And municipalities have to encourage their registration, and in most cases, they have done it so far for different reasons that we can discuss later if you want. So basically, we have a very good estimation of the total number of foreign population that is residing in the country. Obviously, in the municipal census, there is no information directly on their legal status, but we have other statistics that tell us every year, every 6 months, how many residence permits valid in that particular moment are in Spain. If I compare the two numbers, if I compare the number of non-EU foreigners registered in the municipal census and the number of residence permits valid in the same moment when the census is taken, the difference, in principle, with some adjustment that I will explain, is delimiting the potential number of foreigners that lack a residence permit. So this is the basic comparison of official periodical statistics. And then from that difference, you need to detract some other little groups of people that, even not having that residence permit, are not in an irregular situation. First of all, asylum applicants. They are not irregular. They don't have a legal residence permit yet, but during the time their application is processed, they are not irregular. They are legal stay even without residence permit. Once the application is denied, if it is, they will become irregular in their administrative situation. But during that time, that unfortunately in Spain take too long, 1 year, 1.5 years, even 2 years, that person cannot be counted as an irregular migrant, because we don't know yet whether that person deserves refugee status of subsidiary protection. The other group is international students. They are not residents because the length of time that they are expected to be in Spain doesn't qualify for for residence that requires a longer time of period, but they are not at all irregular migrants, sorry. They are just in regular stay, the same as asylum applicants. They have applied for this irregular stay to the state, and the state knows that they are here for a certain temporary period in order to follow their studies. And finally, we also have to detract the non-EU foreigners that have a family link with an EU resident in Spain. They are, through family reunification regulated by the EU law, they are allowed definitely to be in Spain, but they don't receive a residence permit under the immigration law. They receive a family card under the EU regulations. Okay, so they also need to be counted as regular migrants. The only thing is they don't receive a such residence permit, but family card that is classified in a different type of statistics. Once we do that for all different moments in time that we have had this, we get an estimation. Obviously, this is not a perfect number. This is why the exact number can vary depending on the precision in every moment of the different statistics that we are putting together in this calculus, but there is the trend of the estimation using always the same method of irregular population living in Spain in a particular moment of time. So this is the graph that you have here is from 2014 up to the end of 2022, but still we can also complete it almost until 2023. It has gone up for different reasons that we comment in a bit. So basically what we can see there is that the number of irregular residents in the country goes down when the economic cycle is down as well, and with the improvement of the economic situation, usually it reduces, and the other way around. So it goes hand in hand with the economic cycle, but on the other hand, also is affected definitely by the legal changes that we implement over time in order to facilitate or not the transit from an irregular situation to the obtention of a regular permit, of a residence permit. So basically here what you see is that at the end of 2022, the estimation told us that we have approximately 400,000 people, foreigners, in an irregular situation, and about 100,000 were minors. So why we focus on adult irregular population? Because minors in Spain are never irregular. They may lack the proper documentation, but they are not irregular, never. They are minors first, and then migrants or foreigners, and they deserve protection regardless of their documentation. If a minor in Spain lacks of the proper documentation, this is responsibility of the state. It's not responsibility of the minor, and because of that reason, we cannot count that as irregular. This is different to many other EU countries, but this has been the situation in Spain for decades. And additionally, when they are minors accompanied by their parents, mother or father, both, as soon as either the mother or the father gets a residence permit, the child will be regularized immediately. So we'll get their documentation. This is why we always focus on the adult population obviously the number of children, foreign children without the proper documentation is an important thing to deal with and to solve from a public policy point of view, but still in order to quantify the number of irregular migrants, it's much more appropriate to focus exclusively in the number of adults. As I mentioned already, the changes in the trends refer or relate basically to the economic cycle and the changes in the legislation. And we will comment in a bit the changes in the legislation that have been more relevant lately. Moving to the part of irregular migration, irregular entry in this case, that received most of the attention in the media, and that most people associate with the word irregular migrant or irregular migration. The reports by the Ministry of Interior that I mentioned before, this is what we have reflected in the picture that you can see. This is how the number of by definition, irregular arrivals by boats have changed over time since 2006, where we have the Cayucus crisis, the big peak in the historical series, up to today. Obviously, 2024 still ongoing, so that number will be a bit higher or much higher, we don't know yet, and at the end of the year. We see different peaks that we can comment later, but which is important is that the total number in the maximum peak of the series in 2018 there was 57,000, mixing also the sea arrivals with the land arrival that year, because situation in Ceuta and Melilla was more complicated in terms of the number of entries that we registered. In any case, what I tried to show you, which is the most relevant point, let's move here. If we put it here, the blue line is the same blue line that you were watching in the previous slide. The orange line is the number, official number published by the National Institute of Statistics of the total annual number of migrants, foreigners, foreign-born, that came to the country every year. So this is the proportion that arrivals by sea represent over the total number of immigration every year in the country. In the maximum point, 2018, the proportion was less than 7%, if I remember correctly. So we put all the focus, when talking about migration, about something that represents more or less 5% of the total number of arrivals in the country. And we forget completely that in the orange line, most of them, depending on the period, not during the whole period, most of them enter regularly, but many of them became irregular after 3 months when they overstay the duration of the tourist visa. So we are taking one little part as representative of a much bigger and complex and varied phenomenon. And this is something that I repeat once and again, but obviously in the media, this story is not as appealing. I mean, it's really frustrating that we have such a distorted, we promote a distorted view of the complete phenomenon by focusing only in a little part that is very important. We have to deal with it. It has many implications for the people that participate in this type of migration, but definitely is very misleading to talk about migration thinking only of the boats that arrive every day or every week to our shores. More important even, and I didn't put it in the presentation, but I think it is important, this connection that we are emphasizing about irregular entry, not irregular stay, or the other way around, regular entry but irregular stay after a bit, has been growing during the recent years for 2 reasons. Just to give you some numbers. Last year, about a total of 40,000 entries by boat, almost a third, sorry, not last year, this year, so over the almost 40,000 entries that we have already registered by boat, 1/3 of them came from Mali. Malians receive subsidiary protection 95% of the cases. They represent 1/3 of the total number of boat entries that we registered this year. They all apply for asylum. They came irregularly, but they are not irregular migrants. This is the only way they have to apply for asylum. They are fleeing the war in their country, and once they are here, we recognize that they deserve refugee status. Well, in this case, subsidiary protection. So, the fact that you arrive irregularly doesn't mean you are an irregular migrant. And the fact that you arrive regularly doesn't mean that you are going to be a regular migrant in the country. And this is something we need to repeat once and again. On the other way, I think that last year we received 110,000 asylum applications. About 80% of them were Latin Americans. About 70% of them were denied their asylum application. These people, after the negative decision for their application, they become irregular. So the bulk of the irregular migrants in Spain, when we are talking about stay, are definitely not those who arrive by boat, are those who arrive by plane and arrive for asylum and are denied their application. So this change completely they made and the profile that we have in mind. What happens once you are in an irregular situation? Which channels have the Spanish legislation approved in order to make that situation not eternal, to put it simply. We have, as I mentioned, for very long ago, this Arrigo procedure. Since 2005, we haven't approved any massive extraordinary regularization program. We have this individual by individual case procedure that I mentioned before. The procedure, the Arrigo procedure, was recently reformed in August 2021, and will be soon reformed again in order to simplify basically the application procedure and the administrative procedure. We have numbers on the figures on the number of people that every year live regularly in Spain thanks to a permit that has been granted through such a procedure. And this is a way, incomplete but certain, of approaching the number of people that last year was in a regular situation but have obtained a residence permit because they met the number of legal requirements that we have established in order to make possible the transition from irregular situation to a regular situation. And these are the statistics that I'm going to show you, and that are also published in the website of the Statistical Unit of the Ministry of Inclusion, Social Security and Migrations that I had the pleasure to lead previously. Here you have basically every 6 months for each semester since 2013 the number of people that at that particular month had a residence permit that was granted through an Arrigo procedure. They applied, they were in a regular situation, which is definitely a requirement in order to be an applicant for Arrigo, and these people got the permit because they all met the requirements. The total bar indicates the number of people that in a particular moment have a residence permit thanks to a Arrigo procedure. In this case, December last year, basically it was about 160,000 people that were residing legally, having been previously irregulars. And the yellow part are people that since the very moment of the granting of the permit, the residence permit, were already registered as employed in the Social Security system. So most of them obtained the residence permit because they already had a job offer, a legal contract, and they were registered as employed. And the circles indicates the average number of years, months, that at every moment, people that got their permit through Arrigo had been in an irregular situation. So let's comment first the circles, okay? So you see how the average number of years in irregularity peaked in 2020, right, during COVID. It was during the time of the previous crisis, the crisis that started more or less 2008 up to 2019, when the number of years in irregularity increased the most. Then, thanks to both economic growth and also the legal reforms that were implemented in this period in order to make easier the Arrigo application, the number of years that people with a residence permit obtained through Arrigo have reduced significantly from more than 7 years spent in an irregular situation before obtaining this type of residence permit up to less than 3 years. If you go to the website that I showed here, if I can, just for you to show that this is absolutely public and everybody can go and check what they are interested in. Sorry. Well, this is the website of the ministry, but you can go here to Personas con autorización de residencia por arraigo. And you have here the periodical updates. And you have the tables, you have the interpretation. Let's see, sometime, sorry. And I will also show you why I went here. So basically, if you want to focus in particular type of arraigo, these are people that applied for arraigo because they have a job offer. They also, yeah, sorry, I move all the time. Then you have here the arraigo that was obtained because of family links. You have here arraigo because one of the new forms of arraigo that were recently applied for people that were enrolled in some sort of training or education that allow people to obtain first a residence permit to complete that training, and once they have completed the training and obtained the certification, they can obtain a job offer and then receive the work permit accompanying the residence permit. So it's also a different route in order to obtain regular status, first to complete your studies, and then work permit associated to the studies that you completed during the period for which you were regularized. Basically, this is interactive. So if you want to focus only on the green, let me check if this work. No, this doesn't work. You want to see, this is the number of arraigo social, so all of those that obtained the permit, because they had basically a job offer, apart from having been in Spain and proof that they have been in Spain at least for 3 years. You see that all of them, almost, at the time of receive the residence permit, were immediately registering the social security system as legal workers, hired. They already had a job offer, and they were hired as soon as they got the permit. This is obviously people working for long, in many cases, not all the time and not right before applying, but this is obviously responding to a need in the economic system. And they become legal workers, and they contribute with their taxes to the social security system. And we can measure that every month. And we made that public. And I think that is important also in order to construct the narrative about migration that sometimes is so much biased. You can go through the website because it's very detailed. You have here, I repeat, this is not the total number of people that have ever been in an irregular situation. These are people that were in an irregular situation, applied for a residence permit, and got it. That number has increased as the number of irregular person in a regular situation has increased with economic growth, as always happened. This is not new in the Spanish history, but then you can know how many people are currently living with a residence permit that was obtained after having been in a regular situation before. Most of them, as you can see here, were in what we call deep irregularity. So they had never been before in a regular situation. A tiny part of them were people that, having had a residence permit at some point during their life in Spain, lost it, and then recovered a residence permit through this procedure. Here you can see the most, sorry, I need to move here. This is a bit, you can see the most numerous nationalities. You can see in which part of the country they are more numerous. You can select everything, how many are women, what was their previous situation. And here at the very end, you can see the type of jobs they are registered for, what type of contract they have, what type of affiliation to the social security system. So you can know a lot about the profile of the people that are periodically recovered to the regular population within the migrant population through the arraigo procedure. As you see here, if you focus on the nationalities, of course Moroccans are numerous, but if you add all the others, most of them, and we were mentioning, are Latin Americans. Because we know that most of the people that reside without the proper documentation in Spain are Latin Americans, even if they came regularly because they are not required visa tourist visa to enter the country. Finally, to finish and have some time for comments, I already commented this. I think this is just the end. So, let me see the time. Okay. So, just to finish, I think that this is quite illustrative of how statistics can help in order to shape and improve the public debate about migration. And these are not statistics that have been run by independent researchers that are definitely very valuable as well, but these are statistics that are published by the different ministries of the government. And this has been published for many, many years. So many times we become obsessed with the specific numbers. And the specific numbers in estimations in phenomena such as irregular migration cannot be completely precise. But following numbers over time, following the trend, definitely allow us to understand much better the underlying factors that explain changes and peaks that may, when we lose the whole picture, we think that the number is enormous, that all of a sudden the number of irregular arrivals increased a lot. But we are completely missing the overall picture, in which we see that there have been for many years up and downs, and these up and downs in the numbers are much less important than media usually imply if we take into account the total number of immigrants arriving to our country every day. And that's all for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amparo. It's been tremendously interesting. I don't know if there's any question or some from the public, if you want to ask Amparo something. Yes.
Hello, thank you so much thank you so much. My name is Lorenza. I just graduated from the University of Navarra, and I'm very interested in statelessness. And I was wondering whether, as taking advantage that you're here, you were in the ministry, thank you. You could give us some statistics or some data whether there are a lot of irregular entries of stateless individuals, especially in Spain.
Most of the stateless people in Spain apply for the stateless status that in Spain is very similar to the refugee or international protection status. The procedure is quite similar, even the forms and so on is different. So if you go to the statistic of Ministry of Interior, you should be apatridia, which is a particular unit within the whole system. And apart from that, in the statistics in the website of our sorry. Here in the, I will try to show, in the periodical publication on foreign residents, which is basically the stock of regular migrants living in Spain, specifying the number, the type of permit that they have. Let me see here. If you go to the analysis, there is a section which is on international protection. If I remember correctly, that was added recently. I will show you here. So this is a number. They are mixed. You can write to the unit and request for a specific exploitation where they separate it. They can separate international protection applicants and stateless. Not applicants, because we don't, I say we because I was working there before. They don't provide information on application. This is competence of the Ministry of Interior, but once they have obtained the stateless status, they can provide you with numbers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, yes, you can.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Jamal Habtish. I'm from the Algerian Embassy here in Madrid. I am wondering to know, you have talked about 500 irregular migrants in Spain in 2024. I want to know if this data would be discriminated by nationality to have who is a regular migrant by country. And last, if you can share with us your presentation to help us in our work to have data from our citizens that made a RIGO procedure and to know what they're doing here. Thank you very much.
It's basically online to, not the presentation as such, but the information. So if you go here, you can show, for instance, Algeria here. If you select Algeria, the whole information is going to update for Algerians. So now you just press Algerian and you see that the average number of years in irregularity of the people who have been regularized, being an Algerian person in Spain, has been a bit less of 5 years on average. You see here that right now we have 777 or 7 people, Algerian people in Spain that have a residence permit obtained through a RIGO procedure. 777. You cannot see from there, but so these are the people that have been regularized. They have been previously irregular, and they applied for a residence permit, and because they met all the requirements, they already are regular residents in Spain with a residence and work permit. And you can see here where they live in the country. You can see here how many of them are currently employed and where. So you can update that just by selecting the nationality you are interested in, or the sector, or the year, or the type of RIGO procedure in particular. You can obtain the specific data you are looking for, and that is in the ministry website. With regard to the estimations that you were asking previously, I cannot provide the numbers, but you can do the numbers because the numbers are public. So basically you have to compare the number of Algerians that are registered in the municipal census, that are published in the Public Institute of Statistics. In this, the latest figure available is last year, end of last year, and you have to go to this website and check how many Algerians have a residence permit valid in December 2023, and you calculate the difference. And then you have to look how many Algerian international students are registered, but everything is public. So I don't have it by nationality, but you can construct it. So everything is public. I can send you all the links where the information is, and you just need to do the difference between the numbers every time you are interested in updating your information. So it is possible. It is an estimation, obviously, because it depends on how precise. For instance, the number in the municipal census depends on how long it takes people in order to register. They usually take very few days or a couple of months at the most, because they need to be registered in order to do many other administrative procedures, but they can take a bit longer. It depends also on the particular municipality where they live. It can be easier or more difficult depending on the city council and the rules and so on. So it's an estimation. It's not a perfect number, but gives you an idea of the size of the population of your nationality that may be living in Spain without the proper documentation. That is possible.